Welcome to Rauta, I am Jerry, and this is one of the final episodes of true Norwegian black metal of the 90s. Why I say one of the last episodes is that, of course, there will be a finally happening where we'll sum it up, recap the whole series so far, but in terms of the bands that were founded in 1990s, or before that, in terms of being from Norway and being somewhat related to black metal, this is the last episode of the whole series. Unless something really fascinating came up, which I did miss back in the days. So those who have been following the series so far and know that I have probably missed some of the bands, feel free to tell me about them. But before you do that, you probably should check out in case the bands have actually appeared in the series. Now let's do this last episode of the whole thing with the bands mentioned, and this time we delve into the world of black thrash metal. The bands in question are obviously Noir Noir as the main feature, but also bands like Nocturnal Breed and a curious but bad one, Desekrator. Let's start with Noir Noir as it's the oldest one of this trio. Here we are, Oslo, Norway, 1993. Now this is very curious band because nowadays in terms of the lineup, this is really a supergroup. And that needs explanation. This band has been there for more than 30 years now and made quite a few albums, some singles, some splits, some EPs along the years, and some of them are really good. Now, first, members list though. What is known as the drummer, but also guitarist, vocalist, bass, what have you in the band, various years of course, is Aggressor. Now, he's a man of many talents, Vedbuens, and played in Dirtheimskard, played in Cadaver, played in Satyricon, Ulver, Dimmuborger, etc. What is even more curious is that Mr. Man here, Carl Michael Eide, almost 50 years by now, he has this vast list of bands. Technically speaking, Inferno could have been in this list as well, but no. And what is more interesting that if you go through the list here and see what these bands are, what he has done over the years is like, for example, he was one of the founding fathers of Satyricon 1990. So, pretty fascinating story in that respect. Anecdote, if you will. Also, in terms of multi-instrumental man, in question is Apollyon, who also played in bigger names such as Dirtheimskard, Immortal, Cadaver. I'm not saying bigger than Noir, but worth enough mentioning. And also Gorgoroth Live and other bands. And then last but definitely not least, we have Blasphemer, who have also played in bands like Mayhem, being one of the main songwriters at one point, and also nowadays he's part of Ultimas, which is a supergroup with its own merits, with, you know, Dave from Morbid Angel and the Cryptosy drummer, whose name I never got to remember. This is a band I tried to get for interview. David Vincent from Morbid Angel, but Flo Monier, I always forget his names. So he has two supergroups, and we got to say that Apollyon and Aggressor kind of had more than one. So Noir, more or less nowadays, in its own merits and own terms, is a supergroup. But what is important, of course, is how is their black thrash metal to begin with? I mean, it started quite early in the 90s, 1993, and already had demos at 1994. And before that, the guys already had done something more or less meaningful. What really started the band's career, however, is Dreams Like Deserts EP, which I think is still one of the best by the band, one of the best black thrash releases of all time. In general, I would go as far as to say Noir is the best black thrash band out there. Hands down. Now, there are individual releases that might be better than this, such as Abzu's Terra, if you want to call Terra black thrash one. I would personally call it that. But since Abzu is not mostly black thrash, I would give the title of the best black thrash band to Noir for the various reasons. And the various reasons are, of course, the music, the releases, and keeping it true all the way through. This was soon followed by Black Thrash Attack 1996, the debut album, which is also one of the best in the genre. Really strong debut album, kind of showing that these guys are no fooleries. These are doing the real deal. And as such, they kind of nailed it down. Deep Tracks of Hell a couple of years later, being the second album, also a strong one. Now, around these years, there were things that happened and things started changing. And I would say later on, when they go for the Merciless, Haters Rise and all that stuff, the band started to change more towards traditional thrash metal. Some might say modern, but let's be honest about it, it's still more trash than black trash. And whether you like it or not, that's a different question. I mean, it's a totally different theme and opinion topic, whatever. But I'm saying that this band kind of changed over the years. And of course it changed how I feel about the band. Now, pretty much all the albums, well, all the albums in fact, and most of the smaller releases I've gotten to hear throughout the years. I have, for example, listened to the live album because I don't really care about them. But in terms of this main discography, we just kind of, trim it down. I would say the early albums are more important, especially in terms of related to Norwegian black metal, because these are more black trash. But over the years, like I said, they started to change towards rather traditional trash. And in my opinion, they kind of lost part of their soul. Don't get me wrong, I really, really love thrash metal, especially the old 80s kind, but their style has never been as impactful without the black metal ingredient, in my opinion. Still, nonetheless, all these releases are good, more or less. I'm just saying that these last couple of two ones are weaker what they did early on, but that's just my opinion, and you don't have to agree, obviously. But if you want to get the early feeling of Noir and what made them so important already in the late 90s or even mid 90s in terms of black trash attack, as well as the Dreams EP before that, I would say these are essential for you to learn about what was going on back in the 90s in terms of Norwegian black metal, even if this guy added thrash metal into the mix. So very, very important band, and I'm still happy that they're going on even at some point, couple of points. It seemed like this band was not going to happen. For example, when Aggressor fell from this fourth floor building, 2005. Now it seems ages ago, but I remember getting the news, and there was like speculation if he would ever be able to play again and all that stuff. But he got back on his feet. Everything eventually started working out and things went nicely. But I remember that being kind of a big in the news. Not exactly like Gorton of Bathory has died kind of a big, but nonetheless, when these kind of things happen, people are scared shitless about their favorite bands. And obviously, around those times, people were upset for a reason. But anyway, this is a band that I've got to see live, as well as got to interview them. And man, I'm still proud of them and what they are doing, and I hope to see them this summer again. Maybe even for a new interview, because I'm not really satisfied with the first one. It's a good band and solid. Definitely worth checking out in case you have totally missed it for a reason or another. Another trash black metal band. Note, by the way, this is black trash, and here it is says trash black. Now, this might be just a coincidence, but in my opinion, it kind of also is very important, because Nocturnal Breed, also from Oslo, 1996, so a couple of years later, is more trash than black. And this is an important thing to understand, because when you listen these albums or bands back to back like I basically did, just to refresh my memory and all, you can clearly see that Nocturnal Breed, or here rather, Nocturnal Breed is more on the trashier side of things versus black metal side of things, especially the early ones. I mean, I skipped the demos for this time and went straight on for Aggressor, my favorite Nocturnal Breed album, which I got to found about like late 90s. Might have 1998 or so, 1999. I'm not exactly sure, because I remember that by 1999, for sure, I remember this through my girlfriend. I remember talking to my girlfriend back then, his friend. Her friend, him. Anyway, so I was pointing out, talking to him when I was at my girlfriend's place back then, that like these are really good, and he was like, I don't know, man, they have like too much goofy things going on. It was the black metal purity back in the late 90s. We were serious guys, but I mean, maybe for my thrash metal love and all that stuff, I was like, I don't give a fuck. They might have like beer, what do you call it, like 24 bags of beer, not cans, but bottles. And when you just kind of shake them, you will hear the kind of a clinging noise, a cling, 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 when the bottles are, banging against one another. And these kind of albums have those kind of like goofy moments. They could like, okay, point out like, we're drinking beer, we're playing out metal, we don't give a fuck. And I like that badass attitude, even if it might have been a little bit goofy. Like with the cover, I mean, this ain't no very serious stuff what you have here. Like, okay. But the funny thing is, these early albums were a little bit different. For example, you would have these guys from other bands, like this one playing in Gehenna. And also if you like go for example, the first album, this is in my opinion curious, you would have people like Astenu and Tudal from Dimmu Borgir, not to mention a Damnator, also known as Silenos from Dimmu Borgir. So this was back then seen as a Dimmu Borgir sidekick, even though technically speaking, of course, Nocturnal Breed probably was not that. But the early years were probably different, and man, this Aggressor album still sounds so badass, sick album if you will. And all these first releases back in the days, they were solid, and they had the purest or almost like perfect combination black metal of thrash metal together, much like Aura Noir. But similar things started to happen after the Tools of the Trade, which is in my opinion the last of the best trio by Nocturnal Breed 2000. The band started shifting. Now there was a big gap, 7 years between the albums here, Fields of Rauta, the 4th album, and the Tools of the Trade 3rd album, even if there were EPs and whatever in between. And of course, because of the lineup changing and all that stuff. I mean, if you check it out, you will see the members list. There are 2 old people in the band, bass and vocals, guitars, but drummers and other people had changed throughout the years. So there was a big change from the 1990s Nocturnal Breed to what it is nowadays, with Fields of Repnable Nights, We Will Cave for Violence, and Carry the Beast. These are all pretty solid albums, very listenable and to a certain degree enjoyable. Much like Aura Noir's latest album, but they're more, once again, into thrash metal territory. While they're totally fine as such, there are some good riffs and, some good thrash metal playing. Something was lost in, with the lineup changes. Much like Aura Noir, even though they didn't go through similar lineup changes, obviously. But something like happened. Maybe thrash metal got out of fashion, or when the guys become older, they just figured out, okay, we just need to rid of the black metal ingredients and focus on the thrash metal, like bringing it back. I don't know, but something changed, and in my opinion, both of these bands lost a little bit of their magic compared to the early albums. I wouldn't call it nostalgia because I'm really, really good getting rid of nostalgic albums that felt good back in the 90s but don't feel good at the moment anymore. And vice versa, I can really get into some newer albums when they are really good. And it doesn't matter if I didn't like them back in the days. But both bands are, in the sense, the very same for me. 2 first albums, they really nail it. The rest are just quite okay. Also, what is worth mentioning is that Nocturnal Breed kind of lost its voice, like literal voice. The voice is so much weaker nowadays than back in the days. It's almost like, damaged goods in terms of vocal cords and all that stuff. But still, overall, pretty good of a band. There are no weak moments in my opinion, but it's not as good as it used to be back in the 90s or even 2000 when the Tools of the Trade came out. So something changed, and unfortunately not for the better, but definitely something good to check out if you want to check out the early albums. And then there is only one bad sour apple in the pile, and this is called Desekrator. Back in the days when their only album Metal for Demons came out, this was the real proof that whenever you thought that everything that comes from Norway, everything that comes from the Norwegian black metal scene in essence, is gonna be good. No matter what kind of side project they had, the Cyclone B or whatnot, it's gonna be good. So no matter what they did, symphonic, good. Raw black metal, good. Melodic black metal, good. Everything seemed to be good back in the 90s coming from Norway, especially the early years. Now, this comes with a different kind of takes depending on who you talk to. Some would say it changed after 1995 or 1996. Some would say 1997, 1998. Doesn't matter what year you would pick. Roughly by the end of the new millennia, before the start of the new millennia, I mean, by the end of the decade, things started going a little bit weird. A lot of bands seem to lose their magic, maybe because people are getting older, maybe they ran out of ideas, I don't know. And also goofy projects like this happen. I'm saying goofy because Metal for Demons indeed is a bad album. Not like 1 out of 10, but really 4 out of 10. That should be fair about it. The thing here is, this is a kind of a supergroup side project. You had Infernus from Gorgoroth, yes. You had Ivar Björnsson from Enslaved. You have Roy Kronheim, ex-Enslaved. Grudle from Enslaved. Tormentor of Gorgoroth, Galskak, Orkustus, etc. So you had people with skill, vision, and already who had proved their point. We can do really good black metal. We can do the top-notch thing coming from Bergen, the black metal capital of Norway. And then they did an album like this, which is bullshit. The thing here is, this is not even purely black trash, as it's suggested here. Surely there are black metal elements, surely there are trash metal elements, but there are also heavy metal parts, and also parts which are just like, what the fuck? You're like adding a little bit like, hey, let's get electronic here, or let's get rock and roll, but it's not properly done. I mean, if Nocturnal Breed early on said a little bit goofy, these good guys like, let's turn the goofy crank up to 10. And then you're like, why? You could have done actually somewhat decent of an album, but the result is just outright bad. I can only recommend you to listen to this for one reason only, and this is to learn the fucking lesson. Not everything coming from Norway or even Bergen is golden. I don't know anybody who actually likes this album. It's that bad, really. And probably the worst of the all albums I have gone through this whole series of more than 20 episodes, more than 70 bands, discographies. This is definitely one of the worst, if not the worst album of all times, coming from Norwegian black metal scene. Calling this album a black metal album is really a bit far-fetched, but like I said, I decided to include some black trash bands for the last episode because they're kind of close to, and at least they have the members that were playing black metal, and still this album has some black metal elements. But in terms of a black metal albums, I wouldn't count it in, like honestly. But if you don't want to check it out, go ahead and prepare to get disappointed, even with my warnings. Now, all these bands are listed in the description box with the Metal Archives links, so you can get to check out the information I briefly went through and figure out. Personally, I still would say, or Noir Nocturnal Breed, you can pretty much go through the discographies and still like them, but Desekrator you can safely skip and just trust me on this. Anyway, should you have bands that I should have mentioned throughout the years on this episode, but I forgot to do it, please let me know, because I can still keep going on with the bands, but I think I have pretty much nailed all the necessary or the important bands from the 90s, and even some demo bands like with the previous episode. So should you have something that you should remind me of, let me know. Thanks for watching the whole series. Thank you for watching this particular episode. Should you have questions on all that stuff, let me know. And the next episode should be, unless things change, a recap of the whole series where I'll summarize the whole thing a little bit in case you just want to get the basic idea of the series and all. Anyway, off you go. See you and bye-bye.